All right, so in assignment number 7, we've multiplied radicals in the past, but we haven't multiplied radical binomials. So we're going to talk about what that is. We've multiplied binomials in the past, we've multiplied radicals in the past. We're just combining two topics from the past into one today. So let's go ahead and get started. So let's start by reviewing a little bit. Multiplying radicals, this would be about as hard as they would get. We have stuff inside the radical sign and stuff outside the radical sign. So if I multiply the stuff on the outside, 5x times 2, that's 10x. And then the stuff on the inside of the radical sign will be still inside the radical. I'll have 3 times 30, well that's 90. And x times x to the 5th is x to the 6th. And then I just simply want to simplify that as much as possible by pulling as much stuff out of the radical sign that I can. So let's start with the number. First, the square root of 90 is the same thing as 9 times 10. And the reason I picked 9 is because I know the square root of 9. The square root of 9 is 3. So the 3 is on the outside with the 10. 10 times 3, that's going to give me a 30 on the outside. Then I have the square root of 10 that I can't pull out because there isn't another number that goes into 10 that's a perfect square. So then I'm going to look at the x to the 6th. Now I already have one x on the outside, but how many more pairs of x's can I pull to the outside if I have 6 x's on the inside? Well, that's 3 pairs. So this is x to the 3rd on the outside, and that's going to join this x that's already out here, which is going to give me x to the 4th on the outside of my radical sign. And I have no x's then left over. So my final answer here then would be 30x to the 4th times the square root of 10. So that's just a real quick review of multiplying radicals. We should also know how to add radicals together. And remember, we can add radical expressions as long as the radicals are the same. And in this case, it doesn't look like the radicals are the same. We have the square root of 50 here, and we have the square root of 18 here. And those aren't the same, but we should be able to simplify those. So if I simplify the square root of 50, I will recognize that 25 goes into 50, and so does 2. So it's 25 times 2 gives me 50. The square root of 25 I know is 5, so that's going to be 5 on the outside with the 2, which is going to give me a 10 radical 2. Now, the other expression here, I have the square root of 18. Well, that's 9 times 2. And so I know that the square root of 9 is 3. That's going to be a 3 on the outside with the 3 that's already there, which is going to give me a 9 on the outside and a square root of 2 on the inside. Now I have two radicals 2. I have 2 radical 2's. 10 radical 2 plus 9 radical 2 is simply 19 radical 2. And so my final answer is 19 times the square root of 2 if I add those together. So that's an example of two things, multiplying and adding radicals. And multiplying binomials is going to be a combination of those two things. So here I have 2 radical 3 times the quantity 4 radical 6 plus 6 radical 3. So I can't add these two things in the parentheses together and follow the order of operations because those are not like radicals. But what I can do is I can distribute the 2 radical 3. So I'm going to start by taking 2 radical 3 times 4 radical 6. 2 times the 4 is 8. Radical 3 times radical 6 is radical 18. Then I'm going to multiply 2 radical 3 times 6 radical 3. Well, 2 times 6 is 12. And radical 3 times radical 3 is just, you could say radical 9, which is just 3. So I can simplify the radical 9 to 3, and 12 times 3 is 36. And then I can also simplify the left side 1, because the square root of 19 is the same thing as 9 times 2. And the square root of 9 is 3. So this 3 is going to come on the outside with the 8, and that's going to be 24 radical 2 plus the 36. And I can't add those together, so that would be my final answer. 24 radical 2 plus 36. Let's take a look at another one. Here, we're not multiplying a monomial times a binomial. I actually have 2 binomials that I'm multiplying together. So in order to do this problem, I'm going to have to FOIL. I'm going to take 3 times 7 is 21. Then I'm going to take 3 times negative radical 2. Well, that's going to be negative 3 radical 2. Then I'm going to multiply the 8 out. Radical 8 times 7, I can't multiply those together, so the 7 stays on the outside and the 8 on the inside. And then radical 8 times negative radical 2 is going to be negative radical 16. So then what I want to do is go through this and simplify this as much as possible. So I have 21 minus 3 radical 2. That cannot be simplified, but the next number can be, because radical 8 is like 4 times 2. So the square root of 4 is 2, and 2 times 7 is 14. This is plus here. So 14 radical 2. Because I can't take the square root of 2. And then minus the square root of 16, well, the square root of 16 is just 4. So things that I can combine then, 21 minus 4 is 17. And a negative 3 radical 2 plus a 14 radical 2 is 11 radical 2. So my final answer is going to be 17 plus 11 radical 2. So let's take a look at this one. Similar to the one we just did, except a lot of people would just take the 2 and make this 5 and 9. But we're not going to do that. Hopefully we're not going to do that. We're going to take the square root of 5 plus 3 and multiply it times itself, which is the square root of 5 plus 3. So I'm going to have to FOIL. Square root of 5 times the square root of 5 is the square root of 25, which is 5. The square root of 5 times 3 is 3 radical 5. Then I'm going to multiply the 3 out. 3 times the square root of 5 is also 3 radical 5. And then 3 times 3 is 9. So if I simplify this, I have the 5 and the 9, which together makes 14, plus 3 radical 5 plus 3 radical 5 is 6 radical 5s. So again, this is a 14 here. 14 plus 6 radical 5 is my final answer for that. All right, let's take a look at one more. Here we have numbers on the inside and the outside of radicals. We're multiplying binomials together. There's a lot going on here. But the pattern that we're going to follow is that we're going to FOIL. 3 times 2 is 6. Then I'm going to take 3 times negative 3 radical 5. Well, 3 times negative 3 is negative 9. And I can't do anything with a radical 5. So that's just going to stay radical 5. Then I'm going to multiply the 2 and the 2 radical 5 times 2. Well, 2 times 2 is 4. And then I have the radical 5. Then I'm going to multiply 2 radical 5 times negative 3 radical 5. So if I multiply the stuff on the outside, 2 times negative 3 is negative 6. Radical 5 times radical 5 is radical 25. Now, we know that the square root of 25 is 5, and 6 times 5 is 30. So this last term is really the same thing as just negative 30. So if I combine my like terms, 6 minus 30 is negative 24. And then negative 9 radical 5 plus 4 radical 5, that's negative 5 radical 5s. And so my final answer is negative 24 minus 5 radical 5. And that's what you're going to be doing on your homework assignment for today. We'll hopefully do as best we can on that, and we'll go over questions tomorrow in class.